Welcome to the workshop, Boost Your Productivity in Developing SAP Fiori Apps. My name is Kolbowski from SAP UX Engineering. I'm there part of the Fiori Elements team, and I'll be your host for this session. In this workshop, you can watch me going step by step through the process of creating a SAP UI5 custom app that runs on the SAP Fiori Elements framework for OData V4. You will learn how to use the SAP Fiori tools to assemble your custom design from building blocks and how to leverage controller extensions with the help of the flexible programming model, which is available with the SAP Fiori Elements floor plans for OData V4. Please note that all code and setup instructions required to do the exercises are available on GitHub. You see the link on the first slide. I recommend you going through the hands-on workshop and do the exercises at your own pace after the event. Before we start, I want to give you a quick overview on how you can benefit from the flexible programming model in Fiori Elements for OData V4. Oh yeah, okay. That's a bit, the slide is a bit off, but okay. The first step when starting with a new Fiori app project is always to choose the right UI development approach. Using SAP Fiori Elements to build apps can save you time and money on both development and maintenance costs. The standard templates provide a great starting point to meet most business scenarios. SAP Fiori Elements apps also ensure that business users have a consistent experience across the SAP applications they use. If you need additional functionality beyond what you can create using annotations, we provide flexibility to change behaviors or extend the Fiori Elements app with custom artifacts. We now also provide the custom page template that uses the flexible programming model as a starting point, allowing you to combine standard building blocks with their own SAP UI5 code to meet your specific needs. The flexible programming model makes it easier to create or extend apps based on SAP Fiori Elements for OData V4. By using flexible programming model, you can build a custom app that runs on the SAP Fiori Elements framework, but where all pages are treated like custom pages without using one of the standard templates. For the standard templates, extension points allow you to add various custom artifacts to your app, including, for instance, custom sections, custom columns, custom actions, and more. These custom artifacts can be added by using clearly defined extension points. These custom artifacts give you greater flexibility, but they can also mean that you sacrifice some of the saving of development and maintenance cost, which you normally get from Fiori Elements. As you own the code of the extensions, you have to ensure functional correctness, UX consistency, and product standard compliance. Now, while you're free to use any SAP UI5 coding or controls in extension points, building blocks often provide a faster option. Sorry about the slide. I'm not seeing the picture, but okay, let's continue. A building block is basically a wrapper around one or several SAP UI5 controls with a data binding to parts of the OData V4 service you build your app on. They include functionalities such as draft handling, side effects, internationalization, and mobile compatibility. Using building blocks ensures that your app automatically follows the SAP Fiori design guidelines. You can use them in custom artifacts like, for example, custom columns, custom sections, or custom pages. This is a wireframe of the custom design visualizing the target app I'm going to build. I will start with a custom page template and assemble the UI by making usage of FPM features supported by SAP Fiori tools. So let's jump right into it. As a starting point, you have to go to your business transformation platform trial homepage. And from there, you can access the SAP Business Application Studio. In the Business Application Studio starting screen, the first thing that is to be done is to create a development space. You give it a name, and you make sure that you choose the full stack cloud application flavor of your development space, which comprises all necessary plugins, like for example, the CAP tooling, and also the SAP Fiori tools, which we require in order to succeed with the exercises. I have already created a development space, and it is already started, and we can access it from here. So we're welcomed here with the Get Started screen, and you already see that we have here now the VS Code flavor of the Business Application Studio. So this now runs on Microsoft Visual Studio Code, which is quite nice because you can use the standard extensions from the Microsoft Marketplace. What we have to do first is to get the sample service that is available in the GitHub repository for this hands-on session. We just get the link. And on the welcome screen, we choose clone from Git, put in the repository URL, and then just hit go. We open the clone repository. This will refresh the application studio. Now we're ready to go. What we want to do first is to use the app generator in order to generate the app based on the scenario. We have here the CAP Node.js S-Flight OData service in this clone project, which will be the basis for the hands-on exercises. We're starting from a template, and there choose the SAP Fiori application template. And here we opt for the custom page. The custom page is a template that is automatically enabled with a flexible programming model. The app generator automatically recognizes that we are, so I'm at first defining that we will use a local CAP project and define the project folder path, which is already proposed here on top. Now the app generator identifies the OData service that is available. And we choose a travel service based on Node.js. As a main entity, we take travel, so we leave it as is. And here in this last step, we just provide some project attributes. I'm quickly entering these. Make sure to choose the SAP UI5 version 1.108. And we also want to have the JavaScript code assist libraries to be added to the project. Press finish and wait for the generation of the application. You can see now here that dependencies are being installed. Just wait a bit for it. While we wait for the app generator, I can show you how you can access the Flexible Programming Model Explorer. So we will make usage of that tool during the hands-on session. So you start at ui5sap.com. You can also choose the right UI5 version. Then go to the Tools page, and in the lower right corner, we have the Flexible Programming Model Explorer. Let's quickly check on the status of the app generation. Project has been generated, so we'll come back to the Flexible Programming Model Explorer in a second. At first, I want now to check on the generated artifacts that had been created by the app generator by expanding the app folder. Let's at first access in web app folder the manifest. We scroll a bit down. What we can see here is that there is a custom page as the root page configured. So it's a default starting page, which is here set in the routing target section. And you can see that a custom view is wrapped into the FPM component. And this ensures that a custom page runs on the SAP Fiori Elements framework and enables the usage of, for example, building blocks. The underlying view and controller can be found in the ext main folder of the web app folder. Let's quickly have a look at these two. So here we see the stub of the main XML view, and we see it is already equipped with the SAP FE macros namespace, which is the namespace we will be making usage of in order to add building blocks to our custom page. In the main controller, we can see that we have the FE page controller as the base controller class for the custom page. And the FE page controller provides pre-configured controller extensions that will ensure you have the basic functionalities required to use the building blocks. Let's also have a quick look at the component.js file. In here, we can see that the SAP FE core app component is extended. And this ensures that all the necessary services, like, for example, routing, edit flow, and so on, which are needed for the building blocks and templates, are working properly. You get this all already pre-configured by choosing the custom page template in the app generator. I want to also quickly jump to the Flexible Programming Model Explorer and talking about the custom page and usage of building blocks in the custom app, which I just mentioned. I want to highlight the guidance chapter, where you have, again, a detailed explanation how to enable your app in order to be able to use building blocks in the Flexible Programming Model. You find here a step-by-step description how to proceed. Let's quickly jump into the application preview. So we will be doing the application preview now for the generated app. We can access the application preview by going to the application information tab, which is automatically opened, and there start the preview application. So click on the preview application tile, and we choose here the second script that is being shown. And I'll come to that one also in a second. The script will automatically start the CAP service and open the preview page, which is shown here. Basically, we see here only a title. Yeah, so this is an empty app. I want to also emphasize that the reason why I've chosen the second preview script, and I can show you where this is configured. So if we go to the package JSON, we see here these scripts, and there's one script that has been added by the app generator, And this script comes with an additional parameter in the URL, which makes sure that the view cache is always invalidated, which is important during development, because we will be adding features to the main view step by step. And when refreshing, we want to make sure that they are shown on the UI. Another thing about application preview to mention for first-time users of Application Studio or Visual Studio Code, it might occur that the application preview does not start properly. In that case, we have one new great extension that can help you to mitigate these and other issues you might face during development. It is the SAP Guided Answers extension, and you can start it by going to the command palette and search for Guided Answers, which will start it accordingly. And as said, for a specific issue that often occurs for new users in Application Studio, you can find for these resolution topics. You can search for top topics that are covered in here. And this is an interactive documentation that is designed to help troubleshoot issues or navigate processes and guide users through tasks via a series of questions. By just clicking here, we can access some additional information and then just choose the issue that comes the most close to the one you are currently facing. In our case, or in your case, maybe you would click on Preview Does Not Start. And the most common thing, as said, is that the browser tab with the application doesn't open automatically. So we could click here. And in VS Code, if using VS Code, you could have a reason like, for example, a mismatch of the Node.js and the NPM version, or Windows users who are running PowerShell might have some blocking by company policy. For Application Studio user, one common issue is that you have a pop-up blocker in your browser, and you can mitigate that as shown here by just unblocking the pop-up as shown here. I recommend that you try it out for yourself. You can just search for any top topic you like, and this is curated by SAP experts. And you can have a look for solutions yourself instead of opening a customer support incident. All right. So let's continue. We will now fill some life into our main view. And as stated during the starter presentation, for our scenario, we want to assemble a custom design approach. And for the custom page, we will try to mimic the behavior of the list report and combine it with some SAP UI5 controls and add some app-specific behaviors. To get started, we will use Open Guided Development, which is also a great tool that helps you achieve more complex tasks. And what we want to do is to add a filter bar building block to our main view. I'm filtering here. And here we see the guide for adding a filter bar building block. So I'm choosing that one. Let's maximize the view a bit. So this is a step-by-step approach. At first, we define the CDS file where the generated annotations are to be placed. So we are choosing the one that had been generated by the app generator, app managed travels annotation CDS. We define the entity that shall be the basis for selection, which will be travel, as the one we are using on the root page. Scrolling a bit down, we can now add a couple of selection fields. First, we are adding the agency ID for the flight, for the travels. And let's add 2 more selection fields. Second one would be the customer ID. And the third one would be travel status code. Scrolling down, you can preview the snippet that will be generated. And by clicking on Insert Snippet, it will be automatically added to the annotation file that had been defined as a target. It is automatically opened here, and you can check it for yourself. In the next step, what we want to do is, let's just close this for a second. We want to add now a filter bar building block to our main view, which will then consume the selection field annotation. What we do first is to define our view, where this is to be placed, which would be our main view. As a building block ID, we stick to filter bar, selecting again the entity, and the development guide now will automatically try to find about the selection field annotation that is available in that entity, and it is shown here. So we just select it. And you see how the snippet is being completed step by step. The last thing we need to do is to define the location in our main view where the filter bar building block is to be placed. We get here in this dropdown a view of the main view hierarchy. So we just say we want to place it in the content aggregation. And then clicking Insert Snippet, we can see that the filter bar building block has been added accordingly. We can exit the guide and switch to the preview tab. And we see that there had been an automatic refresh, and we can already see the filter bar building block. Now you might wonder, why do we already have a value list shown? And of course, we came a bit prepared here. So the CAP Node.js OData service comes with a set of basic annotations, like, for example, these common value list annotations, also the labels defined for all the properties that we show, which is a bit of convenience for the hands-on session because we cannot build everything from scratch. So this seems to be fine. So let's take it from here and go to the next step. What we want to do now is to add a table building block and semantically link it to the filter bar we have just added. What we require to do first is, and we will be using another great feature, is to enhance the annotations with a line item annotation. Before doing that, let's quickly jump again into the Flexible Programming Model Explorer, where we want to see how the combination of filter bar and table building block exactly works. And we have here in the building block section a usage with filter bar sample. Maybe I should spend some words about the FPM Explorer. So as you can see, this is a live sample tooling, yeah. So which collects, which shows how you can customize your app with a combination of extension points, building blocks, and controller extensions. Yeah. We are now here in the building blocks section showing these reusable artifacts. And let's have a look how we can use a table together with a filter bar. We see on the right side the the code pane and see here that we have in this view the filter bar and the table building block defined. And we see that there is a semantic link by defining the filter bar ID in the filter bar property of the macro table. So we will adopt that to our project now. Let's quickly jump back and enhance the annotations, and we will be using the annotation completion, yeah, which is also part of the Fiori tooling. So we will add a couple of data fields here. Let's start with the travel ID. Quickly add a couple more. We want to have a travel status code. And for best practice when adding status fields is if you can provide some criticality highlighting. So let's also do that. The service happens to provide an appropriate property for that purpose. We will see how that looks on the UI in a second. Just adding a couple more. Begin date, always good. You see this also works quite fine with code completion. Agency ID, that's one of the fields we also have in the filter bar. Also the customer ID. We want to have and total price. Besides adding normal data fields, we can also add actions, and the service happens to come with two defined actions here that we will now add to. In this case, we choose data field for action. And the first one would be accept travel. Let's also define a label for that one. And we have to, I will just be using the I18N text key here. And the second action would be reject travel. And let's just also add the according text key. Okay, so if I didn't do anything wrong, should now have the annotation in place. So the cap service compiles, so this looks fine. And now let's adopt the macro table from our FBM Explorer sample and add it now to the main view. I'm just placing it below the filter bar. It's automatically saved and refreshed. Let's wait for a second. And we have the filter bar and the table together shown. Let's see how the semantic link works. We choose, for example, a specific travel status. Press go and we see filtering works fine. Great. So this is a great starting point. Let's take it from here. What we want to do next is to enhance the app with another page. And we will be using the page map, which we can access from the application information tab. If the application information tab is closed, you can alternatively also select the SAP Fiori tools icon here on the left side. And there either start the information tab again from here, or also directly by expanding here, just clicking on the map icon and we have the page map shown. All right. So the first thing we want to do is we see here a property pane in the page map, which helps you doing all these tedious configuration steps. We want to have, at first we disable flexibility. So key user adaptation is not important for this hands-on session. So let's get this disabled. And now we add another page. We could go here for another custom page to make this really a complete app, an app that consists completely out of custom pages. But as it fits to our design proposal, we go for the object page. And the object page shall show details of the table building block on our starting page, which is bound to the travel entity. So let's choose here the travel entity again, and make sure not to choose a navigation property, but really the root entity again. Just clicking add, we see that the object page is being added accordingly. Let's quickly cross-check in the manifest what the page map has done. We see now here that one additional entry in the routing target section has been added. Here's the travel object page now, which is of type templates object page. And we have a navigation automatically added from our custom page. So this is all in place. Let's configure it a bit. Let's access the, at first, we want to switch to the flexible column layout, which is also a quite tedious configuration step. You can just enable it by clicking here and then choosing the appropriate layout for your app. And we opt for a 2-column layout, which is in the configuration mid-expanded. And in between, we can always quickly switch back to the application preview tab, and it has been automatically refreshed. And we see now here on the building block, there is already a small error shown. Clicking here, we see that the object page is being loaded, which is yet still empty, but we see that navigation also from the custom page building block solely works based on the data binding context we have in place and on the routing configuration that is in the manifest. So we do not require any additional coding here in order to enable that. Let's continue configuration of the object page. We access the header here and define some properties. At first, the type name, which is the one that is on the shown on the very top of the object page. And when adding these kind of strings to the page map, make sure that you click this small globe icon. This will automatically translate the entered string into an internationalization text key, which is now being shown here. You can also click there to see where this is now being added. So we see here the I18N properties file, and we have this key added here. It also tries to identify whether there's already an existing key and then just reuses it. In the type in plural, we enter travel. So that is the string that is shown on top of the starting page table. We do the very same, replacing it with an I18N key. Next, we define a title. and a description. These are the information that are shown in the object page header. For this description property, we choose the travel ID. Right, let's scroll a bit further down. You see a lot of properties. And we also want to disable the editable header content, because the header fields that are edited would be shown as editable in edit mode, but as we will have these fields as separate fields in a section, which we'll add afterwards, it is good practice to set the header content to editable false. Right, let's quickly check again the application preview. And we see now here the title shown. We also see that the CAP service is draft enabled, so we can click edit here, which will automatically also show the draft indicator on the building block on the custom page. So this is all automatically handled. Okay, let's take this to the next level. We will now improve the page layout and add features like a dynamic page title with snapped header content, showing the filter status as it is known from the standard list report floor plan. And then in order to adopt the custom design proposal more, we will add a tile slider showing open travels with a high total price. Let's start with the first point, and let's go to the Flexible Programming Model Explorer to see what we can get from there. And we have here in the filter bar sample overview, we see that the filter bar building block is embedded in a dynamic page, which comes with a snap header. Yeah, and if we collapse it here, then we see this filter status being shown, and we want to have that behavior also adopted to our custom page. Let's quickly check on the code pane on the right side. As you can see here in the snap content area, there is one text control shown, which has a property binding to filter text info defined. And in the corresponding controller implementation, we see here that in the on-after rendering method of the page controller, there is a JSON model created, and the property filter text info is being set based on the API method getActiveFilterText, which is exposed by the filter bar building block. And then we have also an onFiltersChanged handler, which makes sure that this property is updated every time the filter is being changed. So let's adopt these things to our app. Let's quickly go to the main view of our custom page. The first thing we want to do is to add an additional namespace. And we see here that we have code completion provided by the UF5 language assistant, which had been updated recently to reflect also always the most recent UF5 version. And this is really a quite interesting tool. You also see here in the lower right corner of Application Studio a link to the UF5 version. Yeah? And by clicking here, you can access uf5sap.com. And also by hovering here, you get additional information of the different controls, and by clicking more information, for example, you can directly access the API reference that is defining everything the control has to offer. All right, having added the namespace, we want now to adopt the dynamic page layout to our view, and we will just replace and adopt it, the page section that we have here with an adopted version from the Flexible Programming Model Explorer. Let's break this a bit down. So we see now here that we have the dynamic page, and in the snap content, we see this filter text info property. We see here in the dynamic page header, there is now the filter bar building block that we have defined, which now comes with an additional on filters changed handler. And in the content section of the dynamic page, we still have the building block table defined. Let's quickly go to the main controller. And what we have to do here is to set the filter text info. For that purpose, we're at first adding the JSON model dependency, adding it here too. And now we see here these stubs that had been generated by the app generator, and we replace on after rendering with the one from the Flexible Programming Model Explorer, a bit adopted. So just taking now care about creation of the JSON model and setting the filter text to this property, which we refer to in the menu. And for the filter change event handler, we add this one below here. So we wrap it here in this handler. Yeah. And we see here every time the filter is changed, the event is triggered, and we retrieve the FB conditions JSON model and just set the and just update then the active filters text. Let's see how that looks now on the UI. Closing that one here. So we see that it has already been refreshed. Let's choose a couple of filters. For example, and show whether this combination is valid. Yes, fine. And if we collapse it, we see now here in the collapsed header that 3 filters are active, which is great. So let's take this now to the next level. As said, for our custom design approach, the target design of the app sketches an overview on open travels with a high total price in form of a tile slider in the customs page snapped header area. While this could be as well achieved by defining multiple tab views with a selection variant on a standard list report, and it is recommended to always evaluate what can be achieved with the standard means Fiori Elements offers, customers might prefer an alternative design approach to meet their requirements, which we can achieve with a flexible programming model. And we will do that now. Starting again in the Flexible Programming Model Explorer, we now check what the extension points samples can offer here. And we have here in the custom page sample, we already see a custom page where we have some tiles shown. And we can see here that we can navigate to an object page, and we can also click on the tile in order to also navigate to the object page. And that's the behavior we also want to adopt to our use case. Let's quickly see how this is achieved. At first, here in the custom page view of the sample, we see here the definition of the generic tile, referring to a couple of properties of the current of the binding context, which is in this case the root entity, which is the name of the entity of the FPM Explorer sample. The most important thing here is that we have also an on-pressed handler defined, which is implemented in the custom page controller. And we see here that the on-pressed handler just gets the binding context from the click event source. And the only thing that has to be done is then to call the extension API offered by the flexible programming model, the routing navigate method, and we just pass this click event context in order to trigger navigation. So let's adopt this to our use case. I'm going back to the main view. Okay, first, let's adopt some text keys to the i18n file. Just let me check quickly. Yeah. So as we are adding additional stuff, I want to make sure that nice texts are being shown. So two texts which we'll be using now, highest price and filter status. You see them in a second. And now let's replace the snap content section where we currently only show the filter text info with some code, which we'll break down in a second. See whether we can make this a bit more beautiful. So, okay. Okay, let's break this a bit down. We see now here in the snap content area of the dynamic page, we have a panel that shows a header text. And inside we have a header container, which ensures that the content that is placed inside is scrollable. Inside we have this generic tile defined, which refers to a couple of properties like the travel ID, the description. We have the mentioned press handler shown here. We show the currency code, and we also want to see the customer name in the footer. And as a numeric content, we have the total price. Please note the data. Please note here, especially the data binding filter parameter, which contains the draft administrative properties. This makes sure that the values that are shown on the generic tiles are updated from draft instances every time a travel is edited on the object page. So before we switch to preview, let's add the press handler to our controller. Just add below here. And if I didn't do anything wrong, this reloading, so this still looks normal, but if we now collapse, we have this tile slider shown additionally now to the table filter status. And this now shows open travels with the highest total price. So this is special for focus because they need primary care by the person who is managing the travels. And by clicking on a travel, we automatically navigate to the object page. So this is already working fine. Right. Okay, let's configure now the object page a bit more. For that, we go to the page map again. And what we want to do is we had added the actions accept and reject travel, and I will show them in a second how they operate on travels. We'll add these now also to the object page. We can do this by using again the page editor of the object page. And I'm just clicking here on the add actions icon. And I select the two actions that are defined in my service in order to have them added accordingly. Let's give them a nice label too. Accept travel, and the other one we call reject travel. And in case you missed to click on the text generation key icon, the page map has you also covered. You can just click on the icon here on top of the page editor, and this will automatically scan through your whole project and add the missing I-18 references accordingly, which we'll do now. As we've added two of them, we see here two missing I-18 references successfully created. And checking back here, we see that the strings have been replaced accordingly. Okay, let's test this in the UI. Refresh is automatically done. We see now here these actions on top, and let us select one travel from the tiles slider. And as we said that we are showing open travels here, so travels which have the status open. If I now click on accept, we see here that there is an automatic refresh and the travel tile slider is also updated. We can do this again also with clicking reject travel, and now it is gone. So this is ensured by making usage of so-called side effects. Let's have a quick look at these. As said, the CAP Node.js based service that is the basis for our hands-on here comes equipped with a couple of features like the labels, the value list annotations, and also with a couple of annotations of side effects. And the one that are especially interesting for the functionality that I've just shown can be found in the file appfieldcontrol.cds. We see here that we have for the actions reject and accept travel. First, we have a core operation available defined, which is also interesting, which I will come into in a second. And what I mentioned are the side effects that are defined here. And having the action as the side effect source, we make sure by defining this side effect that every time the action is executed, these target properties and target entities that are defined here are being refreshed. So the travel status code, of course, which is a property shown, for example, also on the table. Yeah, we can also check on that quickly. Select here my open travel, clicking accept. We see here that this now changes to accepted. And we additionally define the target as a target entity, the travel entity itself, by addressing it via an absolute path, because we want to make sure that all the travels shown here in the generic tiles are being completely refreshed when the status changes and it is being completely reloaded so that non-open travels are not shown. You can also learn more about side effects, which is a really interesting topic and is really important to bring a better user experience to your application. You can check in the FPM Explorer in the Advanced Features section. There is the Guidance section, and in there you have a couple of live samples explaining the proper usage of side effects. So at first, all the properties of the annotations are being defined here, but then you can also try them out for yourself. For example, the first example here, make sure that if one property is here entered, then we have the target property here shown being refreshed. Below you can see the required code snippet in form of the CDS annotation for CAP and also for XML. In the future, we will also add annotations for RAP-based OData services so that you can adopt them accordingly. So I recommend to check out the examples in the Explorer here. All right, let's continue. We want to make the object page a bit more pretty and show a bit more information. We will be again using the page map for the purpose. What we want to do first is to add a group section below our header. Call it travel. Again, replace this with a IATN key. And to this travel group, we want to add a couple of subsections. Starting off with a form section, which you also call travel. And then add a couple more. So there is always good practice to organize your data to be shown on the object page in separate subsections. Let's create another form section that's called prices. One that's called dates. Clicking add would help. Okay. And last but not least, for our Green Flight initiative, which I will explain in detail later, we add one form section that's called sustainability. Okay, now let's start and add properties and fields to these forms, starting with the travel subsection. I will add a couple of basic fields, starting with travel ID. And again, agency ID, customer ID, and status code. Right, that would be the first one. Let's continue with the prices subsection. You have here the booking fee. And then add again the total price. Continuing with the date subsection. And you can see how easy it is to do this via the page map. I will show you afterwards the underlying annotation that had been generated out of that. Last but not least, sustainability. Go green. We have green fee and a property that's called trees planted. Let's add these. What I almost forgot, because I mentioned before when mentioning the side effects. So we'll have a look at the object page in a second, but before I forget it, I mentioned the in the field control CDS, the core operation available annotation that comes here with an inline EDM JSON annotation, which is a nice feature by CAP. This makes sure that you can add EDM expressions and bind the operation available to this expression instead of having to add a specific property, a helper property, which is usually used in that case, which is of type Boolean, that is then defining whether an operation is active or not. And by defining it this way, you get this automatically compiled in your metadata in an EDM if expression, which is also evaluated by the Fiori Elements framework. Let's quickly jump now to the application preview. And we see here now our group section with the different subsections. And when we click edit, we see that this automatically follows the edit flow. So we can also use here all the value lists. So this is all in place. Also, we have this, let's make this a bit smaller. We have this sustainability group. And one interesting thing is when we, for example, choose again one travel from the tile slider, and I press edit here, and you have to check on the top total price. If I now enter a different booking fee, we see that the price is automatically updated also on the tile. Also, if I click on the trees for tickets flag, which is from the sustainability initiative, which puts an additional fee on the flight, and then in return schedules an amount of trees to be planted for that flight. If we click that, the price is also being raised, and this is also reflected on the tile. And this is also achieved by a side effect that is defined in the field control CDS file. Scrolling a bit down, we can see here this annotation, and the one with the go green qualifier makes sure if the go green property is changed. In that case, if the checkbox is clicked, then these target properties are being refreshed. And this is also ensured on our custom page and also in our generic tile slider, which has the binding context accordingly set to the travel entity. The same is true for the booking fee, as we can see here. And it is also good practice to separate these side effects in different source property entity or target property entity combinations, because we want to make sure that specific changes to source properties only update specific targets in order to improve performance. Right, okay. Let's continue. We had now seen how we can add a how we can add a group section here and a subsection form. Let's now add a table section also with the help of the page editor. And for this, let's collapse this a bit and add below the travel group section now a table section. Call this my itinerary. Okay, and we choose now a navigation property to booking, because in that here we want to show the bookings for the current selected travel. All right, let's expand this and add some table columns to it, starting with the airline picture. So we have a property that shows a small, nice picture. Next one would be the booking ID. I think I can speed this up by choosing them all at once. Customer ID, the carrier, airline ID, connection ID, flight date, and the corresponding price. And last but not least, the booking status code. Hope this works. Okay. Add. Okay, I promised also to show the underlying annotation that is generated when using the page map. And you can always navigate to the corresponding annotation by clicking on this icon here, which opens the annotations file and highlighting the corresponding data field. Do you see here that we have this line item annotation now generated by the page map with all the properties that we want to show as table columns? Let's see how this looks like in the app. Expanding this a bit. We see here now the table with the airline picture and all the other columns. Okay, great. Besides of only adding basic columns, the page map also supports in creating different kind of table columns. What we will do next is to add a microchart column to the table, and the microchart column shall show the VIP status for the customer per booking based on all accumulated bookings for the corresponding airline. We just click here again on add columns and choose the chart column. For the chart type, we choose radial. And we have a property that's called booked flights, which we choose. And as a target value, because the radial chart operates on a so-called data point. So we have a basic value and a target value, which is a threshold. And you see a percentual representation. And we choose the property to carrier VIP customer bookings, which defines this threshold. Let's just add this one. And as we don't want to see the microchart calling at the end of the table, we can easily rearrange by dragging and dropping, just putting it behind the airline picture. Let's now define some additional property for this market chart column, we can always define importance so that we make sure that also if the screen is narrow, the column will be shown inline. So you can adopt this accordingly to your, okay, this now for the booking status, which is also a good idea. This should also be shown maybe a bit up here. And yeah, defining some importance for that one. For the chart column, what we want to do additionally is to define a criticality. Because we want to have a different coloring depending on whether the threshold is already reached or not. And as a criticality property, so we go for property, we choose eligible for prime. And also, not to forget, we set a nice label for that one. Creating the text key for it. Okay. Let's quickly have a look how this looks in the UI. You can now see here on the as a second column the VIP status of the current customer based on the amount of booked flights that he has for this airline. Let's quickly check what the page map has done and jump to the underlying annotation that has been generated. We click again for that purpose here on the navigator source code icon. And let's make this a bit bigger. We see here now this data field for annotation, which targets a chart annotation with a qualifier booked flights. And I just command click there in order to navigate to that annotation. The UI chart annotation defines the chart type, the measure that is underlying, and the measure attributes, which itself refers to a data point as mentioned. The data point itself defines the value and the target value that is the threshold, and the criticality defines whether it is shown in red or green. So you see all these quite complex annotations have now been easily generated by making usage of the page map, which is great. All right. Let's continue. Let's maybe quickly check for another travel so that we can see this again. And okay, nice. All right. In the next exercise, we will combine some UI5 freestyle controls with some additional Fiori elements, building blocks in a custom section. And for that purpose, we will replace the just created standard table section and add a table building block and a chart building block in order to adopt our custom design. So, and as we can add sections to the object page via the page map, we can also remove these. And the trick is here that we keep the underlying annotation that has been generated. We just remove the configuration for the standard section and replace it with a custom section. Then we adding the table and then adding a chart. Okay. Let's add now a custom section. Giving it again the same name, itinerary, my itinerary. provide a fragment name. And we define where this custom section is to be placed in the app. And we want to have it shown after our travel group section. And we want to have an event handler generated for it, because we'll also add a click handler to the chart building block that will be added in a couple of steps. Okay, let's just add this. Quickly checking in the UI that is now refreshing, we see now that for the time being, the standard section has been replaced with this custom section that has a fragment, that has a fragment, underlined fragment with a JS handler generated, and the fragment comes with a stub, so just the button that we just had seen, and a JS handler corresponding with the on-press handler. Let's quickly check what happened in the manifest in order to have this custom section shown. For the object page in our routing configuration, routing target configuration, we see now here that in the content body, the custom section has been configured, referring to our XML fragment as the underlying template, also defining the placement and the position, and all done by the page map. Great, now let's fill this with some life. As we had the standard table section before, let's check again quickly on the annotation of the booking table, which was here the line item annotation. We see here that the page map has added a qualifier to it. So if you if you name it differently when doing the exercises, make sure that when referring to that line item in the table building block, which will add now the custom section, that you choose the right qualifier accordingly. Okay, let's go to the custom section fragment that had been added, and we just replace the generated content with some code. So again, we have the JS handler that has been generated. Now we add here a message strip. So UF control, also referring to a property via the current binding context. Below we have a grid. And inside the content aggregation, we have again a macro table. And in that case, the meta path refers to the annotation via the navigation property to booking. Remember that we are on the object page, which has the travel entity as a binding context. And from the travel entity, we have a navigation property that's called to booking. And into booking, we then refer to the line item annotation with the right qualifier. No? All right, let's see whether that works by opening the UI. So we're back on track, having now the custom section that already combines the message strip on top. And now we also see the table below. And we see that the building block table in the custom section also follows the draft orchestration in the edit state of the page. So if I click now on edit here, the table building block in my custom section also switches to edit mode. And I can, for example, choose a different flight here. And this is automatically updating the draft. This should also automatically update the price on top. Yeah. And then we can save the draft and we're good. to go with our building block table. Let's also check whether when changing, for example, if I choose one travel from here and doing the same again. So we see now this is 36K travel, rather expensive travel. We choose now a different flight, which comes with a different price. And let's monitor closely the price here on the tile. And we see that it's also changed. Also again achieved by applying a side effect. In this case, a side effect that points to the booking entity via the navigation property. So we're monitoring as a source entity our navigation property to booking, and in case any of the underlying properties of that that are behind this navigation property, if there is a change, then the total price is being updated, and that is what we've just seen. Right. Okay. So let's continue. As said in our target design, we have seen that there is a building block table in a custom section shown, and next to it there is a chart shown, and we will now add a chart building block to the custom section, and that chart building block will show aggregated bookings per customer for all airlines, complementing the customer VIP status scenario that we already have with the microchart column in the table. We have some prerequisites to that. While the microchart operates on a data point, which basically just retrieves a couple of properties, as we've seen, the basic and the target value. In order to add the chart building block, we require some aggregation capabilities in our service, which is already available in the CAP service. So let's quickly break this down. At first, let's go to the schema CDS file, and scrolling a bit down, we see here that there is one additional view, which is called booked flights, which basically selects a couple of properties from entity booking and joins it with some properties of entity airline. And we define a navigation property to booked flights from our travel entity to this new view. And the mentioned aggregation capabilities that are required in order for the chart to retrieve data properly can be found in the capabilities CDS file. You can see here the aggregation capabilities that are defined here. So for our defined view, we define aggregation apply supported annotation, which defines the allowed transformations, which would be aggregation and grouping. Then specifically, we define the groupable properties and the aggregatable properties that we will be using in this chart. And we additionally define a custom aggregate, which is named count flights, which comes with an aggregation method count distinct on the booking ID, which will make sure that we have in this chart shown the aggregated bookings per customer for all airlines, as said. And in order to add this chart, as this is a rather complex configuration, we require the complete chart annotation. We need to add the chart building block to the custom section XML fragment. We will again use guided development for that purpose. Let's quickly search for chart. Scroll a bit down, and here we have the Add a Chart Building Block guide. Let's make this a bit bigger and start it. Sip water. Let's define again the target annotation file, which is annotation CDS again. And now travel service, we now choose our view booked flights that I just had shown. As a chart qualifier, I'm entering also booked flights. Can add a chart title or description, but we can also omit that for now, as it's not being shown on the UI currently. That's why it's optional. As a chart type, we leave it to column. And now let's add the dimension properties. The first one will be the customer ID, which is the first groupable property as defined in the analytical aggregate annotation. We want to group it additionally also by airline. In order to make this a bit more colorful, we switch the dimension rule for the airline ID to series. So now for the measure, which represents the value that is to be displayed on the y-axis of the chart, we go for the aggregate property count flight, which is the count distinct property. So the custom aggregate that is defined, and you see how guided development automatically offers these by analyzing your CAPS service. Let's scroll a bit down. We see here the annotation snippet. We can check it again. So this all looks fine. Measure and dimensions, and let's just click on insert snippet. All right, okay, the annotations file is automatically added. There is one using directive for capabilities where the aggregation capabilities are defined and the count flight properties defined had been added. And scrolling down to the end, we see the UI chart annotation as we had seen it in the preview of the development guide. Let's continue to the next step. We want to now define where the chart building block is to be placed. And we choose our custom section fragment. And the building block ID, let's call it my chart. Defining as we are on the object page as the leading context path, we choose travel, and from our travel we choose as a navigation path the navigation property to booked flights. Now the development guide analyzes again and offers my chart annotation, which I'm choosing accordingly. So again, we have now to define the aggregation path, and this time in our XML fragment, where the building block has to be added. And we want to have this in the content aggregation of our grid. You see here additional properties. If you want to use a chart together with a filter bar, this is also possible. You would then also just have to provide a semantic link here. We omit this for our scenario because we are on the object page. Let's add some chart personalization options, type in item, which allows you configuring the chart a bit. Then we have this selection change function, as we want to have a click handler on to be added on the chart. I'm defining that one here. And selection mode, we stick to a single. Let's quickly check the snippet. So we see here the context path and the meta path that points to the chart annotation and the other properties for our macro chart. I'm inserting this and the custom section fragment is automatically opened. What we want to do now is to move the chart in front of the table. It has been added after the table, but we want to see it on the left side. I'm just switching places. And the last step before we switch to preview is that we will change the grid default span, making sure that on large and medium-sized monitors, the chart and the table are shown next to each other accordingly. Okay, I did everything right. We should now see the chart. Let's just select the travel here and maybe expand this a bit. Okay, we can now see the chart next to our table. Now let's do something. We're talking about the VIP status for the current customer. So we have here the customer Güldenpfennig, and now the chart helps you identifying the preferred airline for the customer. We see here that he has a preference for airline Sunset Wings. Yeah. And I will, if I'm now just editing and then trying to choose a different flight for that customer, we see here one rather expensive travel, but if it's his preferred one, we choose it, and pressing save, we see now that the VIP status switches to 100%, and the chart shows now the amount of bookings has been also raised accordingly. As I don't like the default click handling behavior here, in the next step, we will implement the chart click handler accordingly. So, okay, let's maybe quickly show that if you choose a travel that has bookings for different customers, that the chart also shows them accordingly. You can see here. So this is now breaking down by customers that are part of this travel bookings and the preferred airlines they have. And you could act similarly, optimizing maybe the flights for them. If they want to have the VIP lounge access accordingly, you can quickly see which of the airlines are the ones they prefer. Okay, let's add now the chart selection change handler. Right. So actually the chart building block API allows implementing this chart dimension selection change handler, which is triggered when a chart segment is selected. And we will use this event to show additional information in a small popover. And the popover is provided in the project in the app test resources folder, which we just expand here. So we have basically all the artifacts here. If something goes wrong, you can check here in the test resources folder how the artifact should look like if you have done everything correctly. Okay, what I will do now is to move the popover fragment over to the web app ext fragment folder of my managed travels app. And let's quickly have a look at the fragment. So this is basically defining a popover with some UF5 control with a title and a form. And in the form, we have a couple of form elements referring to properties that are bound to the chart data. In order to have the popover fragment shown on top of the chart, what we have to do is to add the popover fragment as a dependent control to our custom section. That's why we add below grid and content, we add this popover as a dependent accordingly. Which makes sure that so the special aggregation dependence is connected to the lifecycle management and data binding, but is not rendered automatically and can be used for pop-ups. Yeah. You can also get further detail here by hovering and then just again navigating to the appropriate controls, which gives you, if you search for dependent, you will get all these information that I just told you in detail. Right, okay, we have now added this, and now let's go to the JS handler because we need to implement the click handler as said. So we still have the generated stub here shown from our custom section generation. I will replace that now with this code. We have now the on-chart selection changed handler here, which makes sure that every time a chart column has been clicked, we are actually gathering. So at first we get the dependent control via the event get source parent get dependence, so that we have the popover control that we have defined in our custom section fragment. We get the pop-up model here via our view. In case it is not defined yet, which would be on the first call, then we just create it here and set it to the view accordingly. And then set the data of our click event to it. Yeah. And finally, open the popover accordingly. Yeah. Okay, let's see whether this probably works. Let's maybe choose one travel with not so many bookings to make this a bit more clear. So if I'm clicking now here, instead of having it just selected, I can see now here this additional pop-up, which gives him now information about the customer, the amount of flights that he has for this specific airline, and the amount of bookings that are required in order to be a VIP customer accordingly. Great. Checking the time. We're good in time, I guess. Let's move to the next exercise. So in this exercise, we will learn how to change the edit flow of an app by implementing a control extension for the object page with support of the page map. I already mentioned this green flight offering scenario, and in order to promote it, we will intercept in the controller extension the save action by overriding method onBeforeSave of the edit flow API and execute some custom code in order to check whether this trees for tickets flag has been selected for the travel. Additionally, we will make usage of a form element building block that is being used in a small popover that is also shown as a form when triggering save. in that case. So talking about controller extensions, I want to highlight again the Flexible Programming Model Explorer at first. So here we have the controller extensions section. So controller extensions allow you to influence the standard behavior of your application by overriding exposed functionality by the Fiori Elements framework. And we have here also one guidance chapter that breaks this down in very detail, step by step. So how to implement a control extension, so how to define it, how to register it in the manifest accordingly. So this is a good read that I really recommend. Yeah. But what we will do is not doing this manually, but use the page map in order to create this controller extension. Let's just close a bit of all these files and then access the page map again. So here on the page map overview, we have here for our object page tile one small icon, which says show controller extensions when I click it, when I hover it. Clicking on it, we get here to the properties pane. And as you can see, the page map supports in the creation of both global control extension or a control extension specific for an object page. So in case of several object pages in your app where you want to have a similar behavior with regards to a controller extension implementation, you would go for a global control extension, which we would add here. But as we have here this specific page and we're talking about specific behavior for this object page, we will add one control extension for that travel object page. Let's just click here and do it. I'm calling it object page extension. This is a new controller file. So I'm just clicking add and we see the service is refreshed. Let's quickly navigate to the manifest to see what has been added here. Okay, this is now the control extension itself. At first, let's have a look at the manifest. Make this a bit bigger and scroll a bit down. So we see now here this additional section extends, which has been added by the page map. And inside we have this page specific controller extension. And you see here that it is the ID of it is constructed by using the pattern application ID and component ID, so component ID of the object page. And the controller name that is referred is object page extension, which is again located in the Managed Travel Web App X controller folder. Let's open it quickly. So we see here the control extension, and we have here already this override section prepared. Inside we can extend the lifecycle hooks I mentioned. We will be extending the edit flow on before save function. You can see more examples how to use edit flow control extensions, or also routing extensibility or extensibility for intent-based navigation, again in the Flexible Programming Model Explorer by just clicking on such a live sample, and having also here again all the configuration. So here is the extend section, and here we have also the extend controller sample implementation that shows also some steps, how you can override, for example, edit flow. Let's adopt this now to our control extension. I am at first adding the edit flow on before save function override. So the pattern is here inside the override section of the control extension. We define the extension API, and inside of that, the method we like to have overridden accordingly. Right, okay, and let's have a quick look at this. What I said is we intercept the on before save and want to check on the green flight offering whether this specific flag has been set accordingly, which we are doing here. So checking on the binding context whether go green is being set. And if not, inside this return promise, which is expected by the controller extension, inside this return promise, we again load a fragment, and we need to move that fragment also from our test resources folder. And it's called trees for tickets fragment. We move that one also over now to our fragment folder of the app. So we define here inside this promise that we want to have the fragment loaded, and we make usage of the extension API method load fragment for this purpose, which we just provide with a settings configuration, and the settings configuration defines the fragment I mentioned. The path to the fragment. It defines the controller that should be bound to that fragment to the popover. It defines the context path that should be bound there. Right. And on this, let's quickly check the fragment itself. No, let's just finish the control extension, then go to the fragment. So we have on this fragment two buttons. One is for saving and one is for canceling, and we're attaching a press event to it. And in case the user clicks on save, we are calling promise resolve, which is then making sure that the save event is being continued. In case the user presses cancel, then we are calling the promise reject, which makes sure that the save procedure is stopped. All right, great. We have here this small underlined of the promise. So this is an issue that we've identified with the UI5 language assistant. We're working on a solution for that. So please ignore it for the time being. We are quite confident to have a solution for that one soon. Okay, let's check. Let's check on the UI whether this works as explained. All right, okay, we have now here this travel. And if I go now to edit mode, and I have here this trees for ticket not checked. If I now press save, I now have this intercept in the on before save handler, which shows the trees for tickets form. Inside this form, I have this checkbox again, so we can opt for choosing it or just continue saving. And an interesting thing is, if I choose it, we see in the background that the draft is also automatically being updated. And also some additional fields are being shown, and I will show in a second in the fragment how this is achieved. Here we have again this green flight fee shown and the amount of trees planted. And I could now press on save, and then this is all saved, and we see the trees for tickets is being set to yes. If I would do the same with having the checkbox set and clicking on save, then I wouldn't get this pop-up as expected. Let's quickly check in the fragment that we have used for that purpose. What has been done in there. This is the trees for ticket fragment that we load via the extension API load fragment. Inside we define dialog. And the dialog has in the content section at first a message strip with a text, an icon, and the icon is shown depending on this go green property. So we have here the binding context also set, so we can declaratively refer to that property. So to make sure that you know what I mean. So if I do this now again, pressing save, see now here that this green icon is shown if I press on this checkbox. The more interesting part, is the form that is shown below, because inside that form we're making usage of another macro, which is the form element. And the form element building block provides an easy way to add a label and visibility control to a field inside a form. Also driven by the metadata and the underlying semantics. You can either set a label manually, or the building block will get the label automatically from the annotations. And the visible property as shown also refers in that case to the go green property, which makes sure if it is clicked, then the fields are shown or hidden accordingly. Pressing save. And actually we're done. So right in time, I finished with all of the exercises. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope my colleagues that were operating in the background could help you answering your questions. So kudos to Nicolas Waechter, to Nicolas LUNET, Marcel Waechter, and Caroline Welsh, who had my back during this session and who will hopefully who are hopefully able to answer all of your questions. When going through the exercises after the event and you are facing some issues, you can also raise an issue on the GitHub repository. So we have here this issues tab, and we will closely monitor it for the next 2 weeks. So in case you run into troubles, issues, or have additional questions, do not hesitate to raise them in there. Okay, 7 minutes left. I didn't get any notice from my colleagues if there are any questions that I have to answer, so I'm quite confident that they could cover them all. So with that, I would say that we close the session here, and I wish you a nice TechEd, and thanks for your attention.